Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Paravano. I'm here at MIT, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome you again. I know that Craig has done that once, but it's a special treat this year. We're at the new edition of the MIT Media Lab. For those of you that have been with us the last couple of years, we were at the Faculty Club, which has now been not torn down, but torn up, so that they can build a new conference center over there. So maybe in a couple of years, you'll have a choice of whether to have the conference here or there. But you know what? There's a couple of comments I wanted to make in welcoming you here, because it is important for MIT to host this kind of discussion. And it was a treat to get Pete's comments about Ford and the truck, and it was great for me to hear that Michigan accent because I grew up in Michigan. So I'm a big fan of the automobile industry, and it's a pleasure to welcome this kind of discussion on the campus of a university that really models itself as a place where people can learn and do things that really can change the world. You know, there's a small college up the street that's having its commencement today. I hope you didn't have to get stuck in that traffic. But, you know, they do a lot of good thinking up there. They're smart people. But at MIT, we do a lot of action-oriented thinking as well. And I'm particularly pleased this year that we've been able to increase the number of people who are attending who are from MIT. So to be able to share this kind of discussion and conference and information with my colleagues here at MIT has been a goal of ours ever since the early days, when, about 4 or 5 years ago, when we started thinking about holding this conference here. I know that John Lawler and I and Silvio and Keith and a number of you who were really germane to this process of bringing this conference here to MIT thought a lot about sharing this information with students of the future who were going to be leaders both in industry and in research, because that's what MIT is all about. What distinguishes MIT is the fact that we put research into the teaching element, and that's such a great part of the undergraduate and graduate experience here at MIT. I want to mention a couple of my colleagues because, as you'll see, they're worth mentioning. We have the pleasure today, I was delighted to bump into him as we were having lunch, Professor John Haywood, who came to MIT, if I understand this correct, in 1964. I think that means 50 years at MIT. John, if you could just raise your hand so everybody knows who you are. But John has been really the lifeblood of MIT when it comes to automobiles and combustion engines, air pollution, everything having to do with transportation and automobiles. John knows a lot of something about each elements of that, and it's a pleasure to have you here, John. Thank you very much. Also, Dr. Brian Reamer, who you will hear from in the panel from the Age Lab. Brian has helped us with this conference. It's a pleasure to have Brian with us, and as I said, you'll hear more from him as well. You know, there's a couple of very quick comments I want to make because you heard a lot of technical information and very specific elements of how the truck was planned at Ford and how the dreams and plans and comments of customers were so well implemented into the design. You know, from my standpoint, automobiles are not the key thing of transportation because so far I haven't been able to drive one. But I know that those days are coming, and part of today's discussion is all about that. So I certainly welcome that. But I have other perspectives. I know that I too need to get around. I need transportation. And if some of this discussion can help those of us who aren't able to drive for whatever reason, those are challenges that our society needs to respond to as well. And I know that government has tried and not always done very well. I know that there are paratransit systems that try to get at some of that problem, but so far it's been a real struggle. I invited the leader of one of the local nonprofits that does exactly that, provide transportation for elderly people and folks who have disabilities. I wonder if you'd please join me in welcoming and recognizing Reed Cochran, who directs SCM Transportation here in Cambridge and Somerville. Reed, why don't you just, can you just give us about 20 seconds about what your organization does?
Hi there. I'm running door-to-door transportation by SCM. We're based in Somerville, and we do paratransit for all of Greater Boston. We're doing 10,000 one-way trips a month. We're a sister organization to the RIDE. We're a private nonprofit. And the landscape for paratransit is moving very quickly from just to not measure just in terms of number of trips provided, but are people actually getting where they need to go. So we're moving out of the transactional sort of can we get you to the doctor and more towards an information type service where we're providing a portal to all of the services that are available. So it's really sort of interesting harmony here because of the extent to which this platform today is about the actual technology of moving vehicles around, but it's also about the bleeding edge of what you can do with data when you start learning things from your customers. So I'm very happy to be here kind of looking at the ferment when these two areas come together. And then I'll just put a little plug in. We do have several committees in our organization trying to do some strategic planning to see how we can prepare for a demographic that's going to change radically as more and more people give up the car keys. I know that there's a very interesting car out here from the Age Lab that's going to make it possible for people to drive for a really long time. But from what I can tell, you're going to have to afford something that has 6 cameras in it, and I don't know what else. There's a lot of other solutions besides everybody having this individual vehicle. So if that is interesting to you, feel free to contact me because we could use some brain power. Thanks.
Thank you, Reed, very much. So the only other piece I wanted to say, just because I happen to be here at the podium, is that as a parent, I care a lot about this topic. I have 2 daughters, one of whom's been driving for about 5 years, and thanks to John Lawler's suggestion, I had her do one of those skid school kinds of things. I'm sure there are more respectful names out there, but where you do simulations and really understand a whole lot better how a car behaves. I was appalled to see that my second daughter, who just got her license last week, had her driver training here in a local suburb of Boston. They never took her out on the highway, never. So she's got some anxiety about this. The first thing I'm going to do is try to bring her to one of those places. Why isn't that mandatory? Why isn't it that go ahead. Why isn't it that we don't insist that young people learn a whole lot more about how vehicles behave when they're at high speed and when they're in traffic conditions? I really want to promote that, and I know that John Lawler and I and others have tried to talk to the registry about that and insurance companies. So those are the observations I have, but I'm hopeful that my second daughter will have as good an experience, and I'll have to find, some of those programs are hard to find. I'm not even sure the one that my first daughter went to is still there. So there just aren't enough of those kinds of opportunities for young people. I'm thrilled that you're here. It's a perfect campus for you to have this kind of discussion. It's now my pleasure to introduce the president of NEMPA, one of the fine people I've had the pleasure of working with, along with Lisa Fleming-Brock, who's been a delight to help plan this conference. But Craig Fitzgerald is the president. He writes for the Globe and has written for the Washington Post and Esquire and Forbes and a whole bunch of other places. And it's his kind of enthusiasm and excitement about these programs that makes it really a pleasure for us to host all of you today. Please join me in a warm welcome for Craig Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Paul. That's probably the best introduction I ever got. I have my phone out because I have notes on here that I need to make sure. I have some business I need to attend to. First of all, thanks again to Ford for sponsoring our lunch today. It was greatly appreciated, and the presentation was fantastic. Secondly, an event like this just isn't possible without the generous support of a number of people, including, or companies including Chrysler, Ford, GM, Mazda, and Mercedes. Thanks to NVIDIA, there's a press kit, an electronic press kit that you can grab on the way out that they sponsored for us. AAA, Hertz, Jaguar Land Rover, Global Automakers, Subaru, BMW, Nissan, Car Gurus, Porsche, and Wheels TV also sponsored the program and this entire event today. So again, couldn't do it without you. Thank you very much. And an event like this really doesn't come together without the support of a ton of people. And in particular, I'd like to mention Silvio Calabi, Keith Griffin, John Paul, Camille Kaluski, George Kennedy, and as always, John Bugsy Lawler, and his nephews outside, if you haven't met them. Grandsons, jeez, I'm sorry. Jake, Justin, Jared, and Joey, if you haven't introduced yourself to them, make sure you do on the way out. And if you have a telephone or any communication device whatsoever, Lisa Fleming Brock was probably on it, nagging you to find out whether you were coming today. We could not have put this together without her. This is an incredible event that she really worked tirelessly to put together. My eternal thanks to her. I told her she could punch me in the face if I didn't thank her at least 10 times today. So there's one. And finally, thanks to Paul Paravano, who just continued support of this event has just been amazing. So we really appreciate it. We've provided a hashtag for the event, which is right up here, NEPA MIT Safer Drivers. And if you're going to tweet or post Facebook updates, make sure that you use that hashtag, and we'll kind of keep everything together and see what kind of traffic we get here. For the last 3 years, I've been the moderator of the panel, and for the first year, I'm going to sit down and actually let somebody else do it. And John Paul, not only because he volunteered to do it, but because he's a...
When did I volunteer?
I think you were gone for like 7 minutes, and we volunteered you, so... But John is the perfect guy to do this. John is AAA's manager of public relations. He's AAA's car doctor. He's on the radio. He's in print. But he's a guy who is involved with new drivers. He's involved with older drivers and kind of at a hands-on level, trying to give these people as much information as he can about cars that exist today. So I think he's a perfect addition to the panel here and as a moderator. So, John, I appreciate you doing this, whether you wanted to or not.
Volunteering?
Yeah.
Yes. Thanks, Craig. The New England Motor Press and MIT, this is our 4th event we've done here. It's been a lot of leading edge issues, autonomous vehicles, all kinds of different things. This year's the topic is engineering safer drivers, technology, cars, and minimizing the impact of age, inexperience, and distraction. And Craig's right. I talk to a lot of senior drivers. I go out and talk to a lot of people. Personally, in my own life, my mother is 90 years old. In the last year or so, I was trying to decide how to have that conversation. She lives by herself, still drives, until a tree fell on her car the other day. Car's totaled. I don't have to have the discussion now, but I need your services, for instance. Now it turns out into how am I going to get around? And mentally, she's much brighter than I will ever be. Physically, she's having some problems. So she needs that sort of door-to-door transportation. And can technology at some point help people as they get older? And that's one of the things we want to see. So do smarter cars make safer drivers? Or is it the technology that's can cause some of the problems? You know, that's what we're here to find out. I mean, after all, Google just showed their 2nd-generation driving car with no steering wheel. Big stop button in the middle of it. Are we ready for that yet? Well, I guess maybe we'll find out. Also, the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety just came out with a report this morning that showed that some of this latest technology, automatic braking, lane departure correction, things like that, actually works. Those of us that have tried this technology, we know it does. I remember when lane departure warning first came out, we were told it was going to be as effective as rumble strips, except people shut it off. And that's where we want to see, you know, is there technology that will make it more seamless, easier for people to use? So things are changing, vehicle-to-vehicle communications, V2X communication. You know, what's going to happen with the future? And again, that's why we're here. So we're seeing, you know, some of what we're seeing is that drivers are becoming somewhat less attentive. Cars are easy to drive for the most part, but they get so involved in what's going on. The onboard infotainment in today's cars, it can be distracting to some drivers. And let's face it, if you looked up what driving is, the primary function of driving, if you really sat down and said, what's driving? Speeding up, slowing down, and pointing the car. It's not checking Facebook. It's not, you know, using your in-car hotspot to power up your phone. There's a lot of other technology that we need to look at, as well as engineering safer drivers. So at the same time, the population continues to age. That's a good thing. I want to get older, as opposed to the alternative. And we also want to see, how regulation is going to fit into this. We've also, some of the things we've done, we've looked at younger drivers. We're not seeing as many of them. Some younger folks are putting off driving. And what's the reason behind that? And is technology part of the reason? Is it just doesn't have the appeal anymore? I couldn't wait till I got my driver's license. But we're seeing that young people are putting that off. So there's a lot of different things to look at. So how is the automotive industry working together? Software companies, the public sector, how is it going to all work? How's it going to impact car prices? How's it going to impact insurance? How's it going to impact fun to drive? Personally, I look at a driverless car and go, yeah, maybe going back and forth to work, it would be okay. But where's the fun? The cars should be fun still. And I was talking earlier to one of our speakers, and we were talking about kind of once you get gasoline and oil in your veins, it sort of stays there. And, we kind of look at that. So we have a great panel here today. It includes a number of people. Brian Reamer is a research engineer here at MIT and associate director of the New England University of Transportation Center. Just all kinds of different things, including how we're going to look at detecting driver distractions. Your recent research focuses on how drivers can be trained to trust and understand some of this new vehicle technology, and I think that's a big part of it. How do we trust it? I talk to people today that we ask them to reposition their side view mirrors so they get a better view of the road, and they don't trust them. How are they going to trust some of the technology? So Brian's here to help us with that. Also, we have Danny Shapiro here. He's director of NVIDIA. They're focusing on solutions to enable faster and better designs of automobiles, as well as some of the in-vehicle solutions for infotainment. Personally, when I get into some cars and I want to change the station from satellite to AM, for instance, and it takes 4 steps, that's not that good to me. I don't want to be distracted when I'm on the road. So we kind of look at some of this technology. Is there a way to make it easier? Danny served as marketing and business development engineering at various high-tech companies. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Engineering and Computer Science from Princeton, lives in Northern California, and charges up his electric car with solar panels on his roof. So we'll have to hear more about that. And then we have John Kapp from General Motors. John is currently Director of Electrical and Control System Research at General Motors. Research and Development is responsible for the development of advanced electrical system and components for vehicle safety, comfort, and infotainment. He's also the strategic lead for active safety and driver's assistance. John holds a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Kettering and a Master's in Engineering from Purdue, and has been at General Motors for over 25 years. Then we have Jeff Rule. He's the Director of Business Development for Autoliv, their active safety systems. And all of this information is in your booklet you got when you came in, so if you want to find out more information about our speakers. Then rounding out our panel, John Bozella. He is the CEO of Global Automakers. He's an industry veteran, been around for a long time, still has oil in his veins, and he was with Chrysler and Ford and Chrysler LLC for many years, and even at one point served as New York City's Director of State Legislative Affairs under Mayor David Dinkins. So we have a great group of people here with a vast amount of knowledge, and it sort of reflects back into all of the various things that we see today. As the population gets older, as we're seeing new younger drivers coming in, as we're seeing the complexities of these infotainment systems and the technology that's coming into cars today. Sitting down with somebody, especially somebody who's getting a little bit older, and trying to explain this technology sometimes can be a bit of a challenge. So we have a lot of different things to look at, and we're going to have a question and answer session at the end.